what's the average salary per month?
40,000 bolivares.
So 40,000, to put that in perspective, you said that's like $6 or $7, right?
$6 a month. A month, not an hour. $6 a month. So you can imagine how hard it is to live here.
When the only constant in life is change, you need to be ready. This is the Man-Made Survival Show.
Hello everyone, my name is Jose Prado with Man-Made Survival. Thanks so much for coming back to the channel and watching this video. I hope you share this with your friends and family. And you know, a video like this, like mine, where I talk about the current things that are going on and the ways to prepare for those things, is going to be a great conversation starter with your family. Because if you're trying to get them on board on preparedness and, you know, trying to get them to understand that the best thing to do is to prepare for whatever happens, you know, because right now is no longer scenarios, it's reality. Things that are actually going on now. And if you don't prepare for those things, when they get really, really bad, then you're going to be in a very bad situation. As a lot of people are finding themselves, over 50 million people are finding themselves in that type of situation. So that's why it's important for you to share these videos with your friends and family, so you can start a conversation about what to do and how to network. All right. So from the beginning of the pandemic, or, you know, into the lockdowns, one of the things that I've actually have said is that it doesn't really matter what we think about the virus, whether it's fake, whether it was, you know, made in a lab, whatever. It didn't really matter what we thought about it. It's what the government thinks about it, because they're the ones in control. They're the ones putting the guidelines in place, the mandates, you know, enforcing those things. So it matters what they think. Of course, I'm not saying that it's not going to create a reaction from us, because it is, and it has. All right. So what has happened in the past few days is that now they're talking about a second lockdown, which is also that you know, that kind of predicted, which is not really predicted. You can see what's going on and make a conclusion. And, it, you know, my conclusion was kind of right, that they're talking about a second lockdown. Now, the first lockdown, when New York, Washington, and California were shutting down, and other places, it created this type of snowball effect where once they were in this lockdown wagon, everybody got in it. You know, most of the country got in it, and we saw ourselves in a lockdown for about 6 weeks. Nobody got to go to work. Everything was shut down. The only place was really open was Walmart, right? And, you know, others. But the point is that only big grocery stores. So when that happened, it created a lot of economic uncertainty. A lot of places were forced to shut down permanently. You know, other places were affected in different ways. All right. So now this second lockdown that we're starting to see, people are starting to get into the lockdown wagon again, but not as quickly as the first time, because now we have more information about the virus. You know, some people have doubled down on it's just a hoax. Nobody wants to wear the mask or, you know, actually listen to the mandates. Law enforcement is kind of split into, yes, we're going to enforce it, and no, we're not going to do anything about it. So this second time around, things have more resistance to it. Because, you know, remember on the first lockdown, about 29 states, starting in Michigan, people started protesting and showing up to the downtown, into their downtown buildings, and they were actually going in there. They were out with firearms and all those things. You remember that, right? And pretty much all that got taken over by the Black Lives Matter protests and riots and all the things that they did. So that kind of faded away and all this happened. But then again, when this second lockdown, I believe that all those protests that started at first, that people want to get back to work, is going to happen again, right? Because of the mandates and all the things that are happening. People are losing their jobs. People are losing their businesses. And it's just a chaos that we're seeing left and right, right? So now, the reaction of the government is actually creating a lot more despair than we originally thought it was going to be. Because if you remember, when they first gave us the first lockdown, they said it was only going to be for a few weeks, and then we're going to reopen, we're going to have a V-shaped recovery, and everything was going to go back to normal, right? There was just a temporary thing that was going to happen. And even though it didn't turn out to be that way, a lot of people did not expect it to be as bad as it is now. All right, so my first headline that I have for you is this. California closes indoor restaurants, movie theaters, and all bars statewide as coronavirus cases rise. This from CNBC.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom on Monday ordered all counties in the state to close all bars and indoor operations of businesses including restaurants, movie theaters, and museums as COVID-19 cases continue to climb. The businesses will be allowed to operate outdoors if possible, except for bars, he said. In addition to the statewide order, Newsom said he would also close indoor operations for fitness centers, worship services, personal care services, malls, offices, hair salons, and barber shops for 30 counties on California's monitoring list, which represents 80% of the state's population. All right. That is a huge number. 80% of the people are pretty much told that they cannot go back to work again. Now, this time around, they're not locking down the state. All right. Officially, they're not saying officially you have to stay home, you can go anywhere. But what they're doing is that they're closing everything. So if everything is closed and you don't have a job, where you're going to be? You're going to be at home, right? And that is, for one, it's making a lot of people angry. And two, it's making a lot of people be in the financial state that they've never been before. A lot of people are being in that kind of situation. The next few headlines that I'm going to show you, it just kind of reflects how the economy really is in the United States right now and where it's going. All right, here they are. Unemployed Americans spend more with $600 weekly boost than before pandemic. That's about to go away. This from Sarah Hedge. Over 15 million Americans have now filed for first-time jobless benefits since lockdown began. Also from Sarah Hedge. Small businesses brace for prolonged crisis, short on cash and customers. This from the Wall Street Journal. There will be a crisis we can't even imagine. Why activists are pushing for rent forgiveness during the coronavirus pandemic. This from CNBC.com. All right, that last one is going to be my next headline, but I want to get into, I want to comment on the headlines that I presented first. All right, so over 50 million people. The actual number now is over 51 million people, getting really close to 52 million people unemployed. And of course, many of those people, millions of those, are first-time people who are going through the system. All right, so what has happened is that a lot of people, even though they have asked for their benefits and they haven't gotten them, what they have to do is just look for another job, right? They cannot just sit and wait for it to come in because they cannot pay their rent, they cannot pay their power bill, they cannot pay their water and everything, right? And they're waiting on the government to actually give them their benefit in order for them to be able to do that. But since a lot of people have not been able to get to the system yet, and we're months into this, right? The shutdown was when? Back in April, if I remember correctly. The point is that it's been a long time, and people have still not have gotten their benefits from when they filed back in those days. A lot of those reasons is because the state simply doesn't have any money. So what they have been forced to do, this is people that I know personally, instead of sitting around and waiting around because they no longer have money to be able to cover their bills, because, hours went down, pay cuts were done, and all of that, they just simply had to look for another job. And a lot of these people that I know, they have to get jobs that were not what they use. They're not. The people that I know, they're getting jobs that they're not used to doing. All right. So in other words, they're getting jobs that are paying less than what they're used to. That's what I'm trying to get at. So a lot of people have gone to go to McDonald's, Burger King, and those places, making $200 a week when on a regular time they were making $600 a week. That's a big difference, right? Because once you add it all up at the end of the month, you're missing a lot of money that you didn't have at first. So they're having to get multiple jobs. So that is happening. I know people who are actually doing that right now. All right, so that is creating a crisis all throughout the country. All right, so I'm going to reread the last headline that I read, and I'm going to get into the article. Here it is. There will be a crisis we can't even imagine. Why activists are pushing for rent forgiveness during the coronavirus pandemic. This from CNBC.com. Unable to return to work in weeks away from losing enhanced unemployment benefits meant to tide over workers during coronavirus lockdowns. Many are concerned about paying their rent, which is the largest monthly expense for most of the country. In fact, 31% of renters did not. Again, 31% of renters did not pay in the first week of April, according to the National Multifamily Housing Council, an increase of about 11% from a normal month. Now, as the country enters the third full month since the deadly coronavirus first began closing down much of the U.S. economy, calls for hashtag cancel rent have proliferated on social media and at demonstrations across the country. Housing rights groups and cities across the country, including New York, Los Angeles, and Kansas City, want the government to go farther and are pushing for rent cancellation. However, tens of millions of tenants not paying rent all at once would have disastrous financial consequences that will cascade throughout the economy. Quote, we can't pay property tax without rent. We can't pay water. We can't pay sewer without rent. All right, so one of the phrases that I use a lot when I'm talking about the economy is that I'm comparing the United States to Venezuela. And I always say the United States is on the road to Venezuela. A lot of people did not really agree with me when I first started talking about this in the earlier days of the podcast and, all throughout these months that we have gone through the virus. For a lot of people, it wasn't that bad yet, all right? But we're going there, all right? And a lot of people are starting to change their mind because they're seeing all the things that's going on right now. So people are getting a lot of government help, and it's about to go away. During these few days in this week, they're talking about what they're going to do to help the Americans, all right? But as far as businesses and everything goes, they're seeing a lot of things. And the government is doing something about it, but a lot of people think that because the lower people, the lower class people are the ones that are suffering the most, it's not going to affect the wealthy people, the bigger chain stores, the ones that are not really getting locked down. But when people run out of money, they're not going to buy anything from the big store chains, and which in turn is going to bring down the profits for them too. And then when nobody pays anything, then everything's going to go straight to crap. My next headline talks about that. Here it is. This is a financial extinction event. This from Charles Hugh Smith, blogspot.com. Consumer behavior and uncertainty have already changed, and so businesses that cannot survive on much lower revenues won't last long enough to emerge from the nuclear winter of uncertainty and shift in sentiment. Meanwhile, the entire food chain of landlords, banks, local governments, employees, etc. depend on enterprises returning to 100% of 2019 revenues. As tenants stop paying rent, landlords default on mortgages, sending banks into insolvency, leaving local governments with less tax revenue and employees with fewer job prospects. The lower reaches of the financial food chains are already dying, and every entity that depends on that layer is doomed. The small businesses die off will bring down distributors, banks, landlords, and employment. As the thin layer collapses, then the top predators will starve to death as well. Big tech, healthcare, higher education, tourism, local tax revenues, etc. The clouds are spreading and thickening, and the dawn sky is tinted an ominous red. There's a financial extinction event, and the Fed's pathetic shamans can't reverse history. All right, so that is very spot on, because that is what's happening, okay? A lot of people think that because rich people have all this money, and they then getting bailed out too, but because they have so many resources, they don't think they're gonna fall. We have seen tech stocks skyrocket. We have seen Jeff Bezos get even richer and richer, Tesla as well. We have seen all this rally all throughout the markets, and of course all of that is artificially propped up because of the Fed. The Fed is printing so much money, right? But now that the money is starting to run out with this round of stimulus package and all that, because as I mentioned a second ago, for the unemployed, their benefits are going to end July 31st. So that means that August 1st and on, they will no longer get the extra $600. Okay, and of course, people are spending more money with that extra money because they have more money. It always happens that way. When you have more money to spend, you buy more things that you don't need. Right? We see rich people, they buy a bunch of ridiculous things all the time, and you just wish you had the same kind of money so you can do the same, right? So that is not a big surprise, okay? But the government is starting to step in because they know what's going on and they see where it's going, okay? Like I said, if it wasn't for government's help and all the money printing that they're doing, we would be looking a lot like Venezuela right now, or a third world country, right? But let me tell you that just because we are printing all this money and the government is helping all these people now, doesn't mean they're gonna be able to do it later. How many years down the road? I'm not sure, but we're gonna get into it, all right? So my next headline says this: McConnell says economy needs another shot of adrenaline, backs additional rounds of stimulus checks. This from foxnews.com. McConnell has been negotiating with top congressional Democrats and the White House on what the next coronavirus bill will look like, as the Trump administration is pushing a package with a price tag of $1 trillion. McConnell said he supports, quote, another round of direct payments, end quote, to Americans, something President Trump and top members of his administration have said they too support. Quote, the economy needs another shot of adrenaline, McConnell said Tuesday. If we lose control of the virus, everything else will be window dressing. Sources told Fox News this week that an emphasis would be put on liability protection and addressing unemployment insurance in a proper way. All right, so the government is stepping in and they're helping out, right? But back in May, the Democrats, the representatives in the House, they did pass a bill. All right, it was the HEROES Act, and that one had $3.5 trillion that they wanted, to print out so they can do all these things that they want to do. Now the Senate stopped them in their tracks, and I think the White House did too, because they didn't feel like it should be as big again. Okay, so the Republicans or the Senate, they're looking into a bill that would be $1 trillion, so about $2.5 trillion less. Now they're negotiating. All right, I don't know how small or how big it's gonna be, but it doesn't really matter. They're still printing a lot of money. All right, and all of that is just gonna create hyperinflation. It's just gonna keep getting worse and worse, which is my next headline. Here it is. As debt climbs to records $27 trillion, Congress says it's not time to turn off stimulus spending. This article is from justthenews.com. As the national debt approaches $27 trillion, Congress says federal stimulus spending must continue due to the pandemic. Kentucky Republican Representative Thomas Massey told Just the News in June that he thinks the national debt will hit $40 trillion by the end of the coronavirus pandemic. Some experts have predicted that the debt held by the public would soon exceed the nation's entire GDP. Fellow Republican Senator Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, has suggested that propping up the economy with more stimulus spending is an immediate priority. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin has taken a similar position. All right, so of course, the way that they're talking, right, they're pretty much telling you that yes, there's gonna be another stimulus package. They just don't know how big it's gonna be yet. It's not that they're fighting the printing. What they're fighting is what kind of leverage they can get on each other, right? Or who's gonna look better. So Nancy Pelosi and her crew, they did their number and their stimulus on where it should go so they can make their bill look the best. Now the Republicans are putting brakes on it and they want to put their stuff in it and they want to make sure that they look good. They never said anything about the spending, right? Some people have come out and say that once all of this is over, that we should look and take steps into reducing the debt and all this stuff. But we know that's never going to happen. If they wanted to do that, they would have done that a long time ago. We wouldn't be in the situation we are now. All right. So all of that is just wishful thinking, or just, telling you something that they're not really going to do. So pretty much lying. All right. So they are going to stimulate the economy. We just got to wait to see how much. Now, right now, we're approaching $27 trillion. Let's say that the Democrats did pass what they wanted to do. That would bring the debt automatically to $30 trillion just this year. All right. And it's not even the end of the fiscal year, which would end in October. So technically, we're about 2 to 3 months away for that to happen. All right. So if we continue in how we're going, we're going to create hyperinflation. So the reason that I titled this podcast An Economic Collapse That Not Even the Wealthy Can Get Away From, it's because I believe, all right, this is my personal belief, the way that they're going to get people to give up cash, and it's going to turn us into a cashless society, is because they're going to create hyperinflation all throughout the world. It's not just the United States. It's going to be hyperinflation all throughout the world. All right. Is it going to be all at once? I'm not sure. I'm not sure how it's going to play out. But it makes sense that they're going to do hyperinflation. And let me explain my point real quick why. All right. So we have seen an increase in prices right now because of coronavirus and food shortages. Right. But let's say that it got to the levels of Venezuela, where it increased a lot. All right. Which I'm going to talk about in a minute. And I'm going to show you. So if the entire world goes into hyperinflation because, there's just so much debt everywhere, which is my next headline. If suddenly $1 was $10,000, you're not going to carry around $10,000 to spend. Okay. Your wallet would be real thick, and you're just going to have to walk around with a bag full of cash in order for you to buy yourself a hot dog. So if they create hyperinflation, they're gonna make sure, or that's a way that they're gonna make you volunteer into putting all your money in the bank, because you cannot carry that amount of money. So you're gonna have all that money in the bank. You're gonna see the digital numbers on the bank, but physically carrying all that cash around is not gonna be practical, and it's gonna become a pain in the butt. You're gonna become, kind of paranoid that you have so much cash at home that you're just gonna stick it in the bank. All right. So once you do that, that's how you volunteer into going into a cashless society. And the reason I said that not even the rich people are going to get away from this is because if we toed the line, right, that all of this is being orchestrated, that all of this is being planned by a few people at the top, the people that are outside that group, which will also include other millionaires and billionaires probably, is that they're going to lose their money too. If they had, let's say, $500 million in the bank, and that gets reduced to $500,000, that's a big drop-off on the value of their money, right? But then again, that sounds like a lot of money. I mean, $500,000 is still a lot of money. Now when you have hyperinflation, because if you remember back when I talked about this in another podcast, a carton of eggs in Venezuela is worth $400,000. So really, with that $500,000 that rich person had, now all they can afford is some eggs. All right, so what are they going to do? They're just going to dip out of the country and they're going to go somewhere else. But what happens if all this is global and the hyperinflation is global, to where it doesn't matter where they run to, they won't be able to afford anything anywhere. All right, this is my next headline, which, it kind of proves my point in a bit. Here it is. The world is drowning in debt. This from Zero Hedge. According to the IMF, global fiscal support in response to the crisis will be more than $9 trillion US, approximately 12% of the world's GDP. This premature, clearly rushed, probably excessive, and often misguided chain of so-called stimulus plans will distort public finances in a way in which we have not seen since World War II. The enormous increase in public spending and the falling output will lead to a global government debt figures close to 105% of GDP. If we add government and private debt, we are talking about $200 trillion US of debt, a global increase of over 35% of GDP, well above the 20% seen after the 2008 crisis, and all in a single year. All right, all of that in just a single year. So those are the problems that we're seeing, not just in the United States, but it's global, because the United States is not the only economy that shut down. Italy, Germany, France, Australia, everybody's shutting down. Everybody has shut down. Some places have gone to a second shutdown, right? And the United States is talking about the same. And as I mentioned a minute ago, with the headlines that I read, Mitchell McConnell is talking about more stimulus, and not just him, but of course everybody else in Congress. Everybody wants a stimulus package to be passed. They just don't know how big yet, right? And like the Representative Thomas Hassie has said, he's going to increase to $40 trillion by the end of the pandemic. Now, let's say that the end of the pandemic, when can we put a date to the end of this? All right, we can assume it's going to be when they have a vaccination. All right, once the vaccine comes out, then you can say that it's the end of the pandemic, because everybody is going to be able to get the vaccine, and then the world goes back to normal, right? Now, let's just say that for a second, just so we can put a timeline to this pandemic. If they started with the vaccinations, the warp speed operation or whatever, right? They started, I think it was when, March? I'm going by memory right now. All right, let's just say April, all right? Just because I can't remember. If it was supposed to be 18 months to just come up with a regular vaccine, that would put it in April, May, June, July, August, September, October. That would be October of next year. All right, so we put a timeline to it. That's just in a regular time. Now, with the Project Warp Speed, it's supposed to help it go a lot faster. How much faster? No idea. But we have heard Fauci said time after time that it would take approximately a whole year. All right, so if we start in March, all right, or let's say April, well, that's when the shutdown started, April, and we go all the way to other April, that means that between the next 8 months, 8, 9, January, February, March, April, yeah, we're already in July, 6, all right, yeah, let's just say 8 months, all right, in the next 8 months, we're gonna double, or, close to double our entire debt for the United States. All right, that's not going to be feasible. All right, in the earlier days of my podcast, actually in the second podcast that I ever made, I talked about an economic meltdown. All right, and what I talked about in that podcast is that we're supposed to hit $40 trillion by 2028, or 2030, whatever. The point is that we have accelerated all of that by 8 years. That is very fast in a very short amount of time. So let's say next year. By next year in April, you see all this debt increase. What does that mean? That they're gonna continue bailing people out month after month, and they're gonna do a bunch more of the things that they're doing, and they're just gonna get worse. That's why I said it's gonna be like Venezuela. All right. So all of this is creating a lot of chaos. Okay. And the reason I say that is because since people cannot pay their rent, they cannot pay for food, because we've seen how long the food lines have become for the food banks. That's creating social chaos, all right? And a lot more people are asking, they're begging, they're screaming it that they want more socialism style kind of bailouts because they need it, And this is from both the right and the left. The left is just a normal day. For the right, that we're having to actually want it, because otherwise we're gonna be homeless, right? And now a lot of people who used to feel like you should not get a handout, they're asking for one because they cannot work, and not because they don't want to. It's because the government said you cannot work, right? And as the second lockdowns intensifies in the United States, all of that's just gonna get worse. Since a lot of people are finding themselves in this situation, then they're asking for help, right? They're asking for things that they would not normally do. Governments are doing, or local governments are doing things that they would normally do. For example, for all the children that did not complete the school year, they gave out the pandemic EBT, and then they were giving out food at school and doing all those things. Which all that takes money. some people have said that that's the budget left that they had over, so they just gave the money out and the rest of the food that they had in the cafeteria. But the point is that a lot of people are depending on those things because of how the government is reacting to all of this, right? Again, doesn't matter what we think about it, whether it's a hoax, whether it's a pain in the butt, whether we've been manipulated, whether we've been controlled, whether it's orchestrated, whether it's a pandemic, whatever. It's what the government is doing now, what's affecting all of this, okay? And as I've pretty much discussed this entire time, is that we keep printing money, all right? And the government all throughout the world, the governments all throughout the world are experiencing the same thing, and they're doing the same thing of stimulating their economies by printing more money. So all that devalues your cash. So anyways, so my final headline is gonna show you how bad things can get and how bad things got in Venezuela, or actually are in Venezuela. All right, here it is. Venezuela hyperinflation hits 10 million%. You heard that right. Venezuela hyperinflation hits 10 million%. Shock therapy may be the only chance to undo the economic damage. This from CNBC.com. Venezuela's crisis has been marked by corruption, hyperinflation, one of the world's highest homicide rates, food and medicine shortages, and the largest exodus in the recent history of Latin America, according to the UN Refugee Agency. Venezuela's hyperinflation rate increased from 902% to 10 million% since 2018. According to the International Monetary Fund, though, it is expected to decline back to below 1 million% due to recent moves by the country's central bank, according to recent IMF forecasts. Venezuela's state-run economic models wasted the world's largest oil reserve. The country owes $100 billion to foreign creditors, only $100 billion. The United States is $27 trillion, and it could increase to $40 trillion by next year. Its education, professional class, and wealthy have fled. All right, so I want to end it with that headline, or actually with a video I'm going to show you in a second, but I do want to comment on this. Yes, things can get that bad. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that last part, that this can get that bad, but we're going to continue to do the same things over and over until we get to that point. That's what we're on the road to Venezuela. Venezuela only owes $100 billion, okay? $100 billion is a lot of money for you and me. For the U.S. government, they spend that in 30 minutes. So $27 trillion that we are now, and probably $40 trillion we're going to get into by April of next year, it's just something that cannot be sustainable. The people who are buying our bonds and doing all those things, they're going to stop. Investors are going to flee the country. All right, so what we're going to see, we're going to see people fleeing the country. We're going to see the wealthy people flee the country. You know, when people were saying we're going to tax the wealthy 80-90%, all they would have to do is just leave the country. Just go, take their billions with them, close all their factories, and we would be in a lot worse position than we are now, which is exactly what happened in Venezuela. Now, that would create shortages of everything, and that's going to make everything hyperinflate to levels we've never seen in the United States, possibly to 10 million%. All right, I'm going to end this podcast with this video. All right, and I want you to remember that the things that you can do now are going to be the things that are going to save you on later on. All right, and before I go, all right, the things that you can do now is to stock up on your food, because when you see the hyperinflation, you can no longer afford the food. You're going to hear your kids being hungry. All right, you can possibly think about fleeing with everybody else who's going to be fleeing. All right, you got to think about where you're going to go, and you got to position yourself to be there before all of this unfolds. Because once you see the hyperinflation hit, it's going to be too late for you to be able to leave. All right, because a airplane ticket that costs you $300 now probably then will cost you $300,000. You know, I mean, the possibilities are endless. So we don't know. The point is that it can get that bad. So you need to have your food. You got to have your water, right? If you're not going to flee the country, you got to make sure that you have a way to protect yourself, because one of the things that happened in Venezuela very quickly is that things got very violent, very fast. all right? And you got to make sure that you have farmland. If you are able to buy property right now that will give you farmland, or that will be able to feed you and your family later on, you need to go ahead and do that. All right, the type of property that you want is one that you can farm it and that it has a stream going through it year round. Doesn't matter whether it's raining, whether it's snow, whatever it is, it has to flow year round. Don't let it be seasonal. And if at all possible, you have to make sure that you have the rights to the water so you don't get sued or you don't get in trouble. Also, if that property has an aquifer going through it, that would just be the best thing you can probably buy. All right, so that's how you can set up yourself for all of this when it goes down. Also, gold and silver. Gold and silver are going to be the things that are going to help you buy other stuff or help you come out of all of this with actually sun money, okay? Because what happened in Venezuela is that people could not buy or sell with the gold and the silver that they had. But once they left the country, they were able to use that to be able to live in the country that they fled to. So gold and silver is going to be very important. You can trade it and barter with it and buy things for someone who's going to accept it, or you can use it outside of the system that's collapsed in another place that's going to take it. All right, now if all this turns global, then I guess we'll see what happens then. But if there's still people taking gold and giving you a lot of money for it, right? Because in Venezuela, with 1 ounce of gold, you turn into an automatic millionaire. All right, if I'm not mistaken, I'm going by memory, an ounce of gold in Venezuela is worth 13 million of their dollars. So you will become an instant millionaire, and you can buy a lot of things with that gold. All right, so that's why it's important for you to have gold, silver, have your food stocked up already, have your water, have the guns and ammo that you're going to need to protect yourself from looters, from people who are going to be desperate for food, all right? And not only that, but from the government too, because once there's shortages, they're going to come and confiscate that food like it happened in Venezuela, all right? So now what I'm going to show you in this last video that I'm going to end the podcast with is going to be how high the hyperinflation can get. Here it is.
Average salary per month.
40,000 bolivares.
So 40,000, to put that in perspective, you said that's like $6 or $7, right?
$6 a month. A month, not an hour. $6 a month. So you can imagine how hard it is to live here. See the prices here? This is a hot dog, 10,000 bolivares. I was talking about 9,000, but it's 10,000 now. Almost $2. Hamburger is like 30,000 bolivares. It means if you work the whole month, you can buy one hamburger and a can of soda. That's the bizarre economy here. Nobody can afford 1 month living with this salary.
And so how do people buy hot dogs for $1 or $2 when they're earning?
So everybody here have one familiar who has leave the country and send money here. One person send you from outside $100 or $200 monthly. You can afford living here.
And can you just quickly explain what you were telling me about how you don't use cash here, you only use card?
Yeah, here in Venezuela it's very hard to find the way to pay with bills. We don't have bills, there is a lack of bill. Everything is too expensive to carry all that amount of money. For example, a hot dog can cost 9,000 bolivares. Our highest bill is the 500 bill, so you will need a lot of this to buy one perro caliente, to buy one hot dog. One hot dog is 9,000 bolivares, and this is our highest bill. So you need a lot of this to buy. The cashier machine only gives you 3,000 bolivares.
It's 6,300 for $1, is that right?
Now, if you have $1, you can get 6,000 bolivares for $1. So, for example, a hot dog costs 9,000 bolivares, but you don't have that kind of money, that amount of money always. So you need your debit card. It's very expensive, man. It costs like half a salary or more than a salary. It's like 60,000 bolivares for this. So if you feel here to the right, to the left, all of this is full of the same products. There's nothing more to show. It's like here, only the same product. It's nice. It's a good price if you need the price, but it's expensive. It's like a quarter of your salary. So you need to spend like a whole week for buying just this. Sugar. $8 like a quarter of your salary. Coffee, Venezuelan, but this are rare branches. I don't trust in this.
The Man-Made Survival Show.